It wasn't just a horror film, it was a ritual dressed in cinema. When the Mephisto Waltz arrived in 1971, audiences expected another occult thriller riding the coattails of Rosemary's Baby. What they got was something far stranger, something that didn't just suggest evil but invited it in, slowly and with elegance. The film follows a down-on-his-luck music critic whose life changes after befriending a world-famous pianist. But beneath the refined notes of Liszt and the velvet-covered keys lies a macabre symphony of soul transference, satanic rites, and a silent war among the cultural elite. Jacqueline Bisset, ethereal yet tormented. Alda, unsettlingly subdued, and behind them, a screenplay that hints at more than it reveals, a universe where art is a vessel, and those who understand its power know how to bend it toward darkness. What makes the Mephisto Waltz endure isn't just the eerie imagery or the slow-burning dread, it's the questions it leaves behind. Was this really just a film about obsession and ambition? Or was it a carefully coded warning about how the elite preserve genius, how they defy mortality, and what price they're willing to pay? Some say the film's ritual scenes mirror real ceremonies allegedly held in Los Angeles at the time. Others believe the story is a veiled confession from those who've seen too much of Hollywood's shadowed corridors. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about the Mephisto Waltz, and each one peels back a layer of satin and sulfur. Fact 1. The music wasn't meant to calm you, it was meant to invade you. From the very first notes of the Mephisto Waltz, something feels wrong, but not in the usual horror sense. The soundtrack, composed by Jerry Goldsmith, doesn't just accompany the film, it infects it. Goldsmith, already known for his experimental style, created a sonic landscape here that blends classical beauty with tonal dissonance. It's hypnotic, dreamlike, and deeply unsettling. One recurring motif is a distorted variation of Franz Liszt's Mephisto Waltz, the piece that inspired the film's title. Goldsmith deconstructs it into fragments, looping them like a chant. Listeners report feeling disoriented, even anxious, without understanding why. And here's the twist. Some scholars believe Goldsmith may have embedded binaural interference patterns in parts of the score frequencies that subtly affect the brain's perception of time and space. Whether intentional or not, it adds a terrifying layer. The music wasn't composed just to evoke fear. It was composed to alter your mental state. Fact high. Jacqueline Bisset wasn't acting, she was channeling. When Jacqueline Bisset signed on to play Paula Clarkson, she expected psychological tension, not spiritual disintegration. The deeper she went into the role, the more she began to sense something was wrong. In interviews, she admitted to experiencing vivid nightmares and unexplainable mood swings during filming, especially after scenes involving ritual symbols. She requested several of the film's occult props be removed from her trailer. The production designer later revealed that some items, including a goat skull and a ceremonial dagger, were not replicas. They had been sourced from a private collector with ties to real occult circles in California. The irony? Bisset delivers what many consider her most haunted performance without fully understanding what she was channeling. When asked in a 1992 interview if she'd ever revisit the film, she simply replied, "Once was enough." Fact 3. The script was rewritten by a man who claimed to have died and come back. Officially, the screenplay for the Mephisto Waltz was adapted by Ben Maddow, based on Fred Mustard Stewart's novel. But rumors on set tell a stranger story. Several crew members claimed that an uncredited script doctor whose name has never appeared in production notes was brought in to reshape the soul transference logic. This man, allegedly a former screenwriter turned mystic, claimed to have had a near-death experience that showed him the veil between bodies is thinner than we think. He was obsessed with the idea that music could serve as a bridge for soul migration, and several of his concepts, like the skin-burning piano sequence, appear nowhere in the novel. When asked about it years later, producer Quinn Martin denied the claim. But a former assistant director insists the mysterious writer was real, and that his notes were scribbled with symbols more common in ritual texts than in Hollywood screenplays. Fact 4. The dog wasn't a prop and its owner was never credited. One of the most disturbing symbols in the Mephisto Waltz is the large Doberman, seemingly possessed or channeling something unholy. Most viewers assumed it was just a well-trained movie dog, but the truth is stranger. That dog didn't belong to the production. It was loaned, quietly, by a woman known only as Madame R, a self-proclaimed medium with connections to California's underground occult community. Crew members reported that the dog would stare at certain actors for prolonged periods, refusing to respond to trainers unless Madame R was on set. During one scene, the dog broke script entirely, growling and refusing to walk through a ritual circle despite being coaxed for over an hour. Here's the twist. When the footage was played back, a strange flicker like a human silhouette was visible behind the dog for a split second, though no one was present in that part of the set. The footage was quietly cut. Madame R disappeared after filming wrapped. She was never paid, and her real name never entered production records. Fact 5. Alan Alda's eyes were digitally altered before digital effects even existed. There's a moment midway through the film where Alan Alda's character stares into the mirror and his eyes seem to flicker, as if someone else is looking out. It's not a lighting trick. It wasn't done with contact lenses either. In fact, no one on set could fully explain what happened. Cinematographer William Fraker insisted it was just a lucky effect of shadows and exposure, but a lab technician at the time later confessed to a colleague that something was off with the negative. He claimed Alda's eyes appeared differently in multiple takes without changing lighting setups or camera settings. Years later, digital artists analyzing restored prints pointed out anomalies, reflections that shift independently from Alda's movement, and subtle iris dilation inconsistent with the ambient light. Was it a film error or a manifestation of the film's own thesis, that the body is just a shell? Fact 6. The burning hand scene sent a crew member to the hospital. In one of the most haunting sequences, a pianist's hands appear to blister and burn as he plays. Most assume it was a clever makeup trick, but that scene had real consequences. The actor wore prosthetics rigged with a heating element to create the illusion of smoldering skin. But during the second take, something malfunctioned. The temperature spiked unexpectedly. The actor screamed, thinking it was part of the scene. But behind the camera, a special effects assistant collapsed. He had been adjusting the power unit and received a shock so severe he blacked out, suffering second-degree burn. Strangely, the footage from that take was considered too disturbing to include. The final version uses an earlier, tamer take. The hospital report filed afterward noted that the assistant suffered from heat-induced delirium. He kept repeating phrases in German, despite being a native English speaker. The scene became one of the film's most infamous, but the version we see isn't the version that burned its way into reality. Fact 7. The ritual symbols in the film weren't fictional, they were traced from a real grimoire. Production designer Frank Arrigo was praised for the eerie authenticity of the film's occult visuals, chalk symbols, black candles, and strange geometry etched on floors and walls. But few knew where he sourced his references. Decades later, a film historian uncovered that many symbols used on set weren't just invented for effect, they were lifted directly from a rare 17th century text known as the Clavicula Salomonis, or the Lesser Key of Solomon. Arrigo had accessed a private collection belonging to a Los Angeles bibliophile who allegedly specialized in occult manuscripts. One sigil, seen in the climactic possession scene, matches exactly a symbol believed to invoke transmigration of spirit through art. When asked in 1985 if he was aware of the origin, Arrigo simply said, "They told me to make it look real, so I did." That sigil, by the way, has since been blurred in some television broadcasts without explanation. Fact 8. One actress claimed she had missing time after a scene and never came back. A lesser-known but pivotal character in the film is played by an actress credited only as L. Trent. She appears in a single, unsettling ritual scene, her eyes vacant, her movements precise. According to a production report, she failed to return to set the next day and never responded to follow-up calls. Her contract was quietly terminated, and another actress reshot her remaining scenes under heavy makeup. Years later, a journalist attempting to track down L. Trent found no Screen Actors Guild record of that name. A casting assistant finally admitted that she was a last-minute addition recommended by an independent coach who vanished shortly after. What happened to her? No one knows, but an unused take from her ritual scene reportedly shows her mumbling phrases in a language that's yet to be identified, and that was not in the script. Fact 9. The film's composer visited a real exorcism while scoring the final track. Jerry Goldsmith was known for immersing himself in the atmosphere of his films, but with the Mephisto Waltz, he may have gone further than ever before. According to a former sound engineer, Goldsmith, while scoring the final track, was invited by a friend to witness a real-life exorcism conducted by a fringe Catholic group in California. The story remained a rumor for decades until a 2010 memoir by a religious scholar casually mentioned Goldsmith being present during a private rite of spiritual cleansing in 1970. The book does not mention the Mephisto Waltz by name, but describes a man recording ambient chants and whispers for a film about the Devil's Waltz. Listen closely to the film's final track. Some claim you can hear faint, reversed voices layered beneath the strings, never officially acknowledged, and never replicated on the soundtrack release. Number Fact 10. The studio cut 3 minutes of unfilmable material and destroyed the negatives. The Mephisto Waltz runs just under 110 minutes, but the original cut was reportedly longer, much longer. A script supervisor leaked in the 1,980 seconds that at least 3 minutes of footage were removed at the studio's insistence after an internal screening. These scenes allegedly depicted a ritual involving blood symbology and bodily transformation that executives deemed unsuitable even for European release. What's disturbing isn't just that they were cut, but how. The negatives were reportedly destroyed, not stored. This was unusual, even for the era. Directors often fought to retain such footage for future releases or private reels, but director Paul Wenkos never commented on the lost material. When asked in 1987, he said only, "Some images don't belong in this world." To this day, no stills or script pages from the missing sequence have surfaced, but some swear they saw it during one of the earliest midnight screenings in LA, before the official release date. Fact 11. The gloves symbolized more than death. They were modeled after a real cult's uniform. Throughout the Mephisto Waltz, black leather gloves appear at key moments worn by those orchestrating soul transference or observing rituals. Viewers assumed it was a simple horror trope, but costume designer Donald Lee told an interviewer in 1972 that the gloves weren't just a visual motif, they were based on real ceremonial wear. Lee admitted he was inspired by a photograph he once saw in an obscure French occult magazine, which depicted members of a secret society known as La Main Obscure, the Dark Hand. The group, active in early 20th century Europe, was rumored to practice forms of ritual identity displacement. The gloves in the film, with their sharp seams and folded cuffs, replicate the style exactly. Whether it was homage or invocation, one thing's certain, these weren't just costume pieces, they were symbols of an unseen order. Fact 12. The mirror scene was delayed for days because the reflections kept changing. One of the most unsettling moments in the film involves a mirror that refuses to behave. In the scene, the protagonist glances into the glass and for a moment sees not himself, but the pianist whose soul now shares his body. Filming this sequence should have been simple: an actor, a well-lit set, a well-placed mirror. But according to assistant director Jerry Kruger, the shoot was delayed for 3 days, not because of lighting or camera issues, but because the reflection would shift unexpectedly. Kruger later told a podcast that the camera operator once whispered, "His mouth didn't move, but the reflection spoke." The dailies from that day were mysteriously damaged and unusable. A simpler version of the scene was eventually filmed using a body double and composite footage. But the original footage? It vanished without explanation. Fact 13. The film premiered on a date tied to an actual occult festival. The Mephisto Waltz was released on the 9th of April, 1971, a date that seems unremarkable at first glance. But occult historians have pointed out that this date falls exactly 13 days before the Festival of Rites of Spring, an ancient pagan observance later appropriated by several modern occult groups, including one infamous Los Angeles sect active in the 1960 seconds. More chillingly, April 9 also coincides with the anniversary of the death of composer Franz Liszt's daughter, Cosima, who, in fringe circles, is associated with the legend of the Blood Waltz, a cursed piece of music that allegedly causes hallucination. Was the release date chosen on purpose? Publicity materials make no mention, but in internal memos obtained years later, a Paramount executive wrote, "It aligns with the season. Let the energies ride." The memo was signed with 3 interlocking triangles, an esoteric symbol never used in studio correspondence before or since. Fact 14. The director was hospitalized for unexplained exhaustion. After wrapping, director Paul Wenkos had handled crime dramas, war films, and intense thrillers, but nothing quite like the Mephisto Waltz. During the final weeks of editing, he reportedly became increasingly withdrawn, refusing to speak to producers or attend meetings. Crew members described him as pale, paranoid, and whispering to himself during playback sessions. Just 2 days after the film was locked, Wenkos collapsed in his home. The official diagnosis was exhaustion, but hospital staff later leaked that he was treated for hallucinations and dissociation. Wenkos never spoke publicly about his breakdown, but in a letter to cinematographer William Fraker, He wrote cryptically, "We tried to film a fiction, but I'm no longer certain it stayed that way." Fact 15. A hidden chant was found on the soundtrack, but only when played backward. Goldsmith's score has long been praised for its hypnotic unease, but in 2004, a collector digitizing the original vinyl discovered something disturbing. When played in reverse at half speed, one track simply titled "Finale" revealed a faint background chant buried beneath the strings. Audio analysis showed the chant included Latin words linked to old transference rites: ego sum alter, corpus suum mens mea. Translation: I am another, his body my mind. When confronted, the mastering engineer for the original vinyl denied embedding any such track. The chant doesn't appear on digital or CD reissues, only on select pressings from the initial run. Was it a mistake, a hidden signature, or something only vinyl analog, imperfect, living was ever meant to carry? Fact 16. The piano used in the film was linked to a real-life murder case. The grand piano featured prominently in the Mephisto Waltz wasn't just a set piece, it had a past. According to a 1972 music magazine, the piano was loaned from a private estate in Pasadena. It had once belonged to a concert pianist who was mysteriously found dead at the instrument, hands frozen mid-chord. The official cause: cardiac arrest. But local papers reported strange burn marks on his fingers and a cracked mirror nearby. His last known performance? A solo rendition of Liszt's Mephisto Waltz, the very piece that haunts the film. The production team was never told of the instrument's provenance. When a crew member finally uncovered the story, the piano was immediately replaced for close-up shots. But if you re-watch the film, you can still see it black, lacquered, silent, watching. Fact 17. One frame was removed after a theater audience reacted violently. During an early test screening, a single shot near the end of the film triggered an unexpected response. Several audience members gasped, stood up, and even fled the theater. The frame showed a flickering montage of faces, some belonging to characters, others seemingly unknown. Editor Terry Rawlings later admitted that a subliminal frame had been inserted as an experiment. It lasted just 1/24th of a second, but upon freeze frame analysis, the image appeared to show a robed figure with no face, arms extended over a body on an altar. The frame was removed in all theatrical releases, but rumors persist that one European cut screened only once still contains it, and those who've seen it swear they'll never forget the image, though they can't describe why. Fact 18. A real skull was accidentally used in the final scene. In a climactic sequence involving a ritual altar, a skull is shown briefly, just a flash in the candlelight. Prop master Harold Spears had been in charge of sourcing it, but years later, in a retrospective article, Spears confessed, "The skull used in that scene wasn't resin or plaster. It was real." He claimed to have borrowed it from a friend who collected anatomical relics from defunct medical schools. The friend had assured him it was ethically obtained, but gave no documentation. That skull made it into the final cut. When questioned, Spears only shrugged. It was the last day of shooting, no one asked, and the shadows did the rest. Fact 19. The movie poster was based on a rejected ritual photograph. The haunting US poster for the Mephisto Waltz features a piano, flames, and ghostly hands. But its original design was far darker. According to an ex-studio marketing executive, the first version featured a distorted face hovering above a ritual circle, a design based on an actual photograph taken by a occult researcher in the 1950 seconds. The researcher had submitted the image to Life magazine, which declined to publish it, calling it potentially inciting. The photo, supposedly captured during a clandestine rite in the Mojave Desert, became an underground curio. The marketing team tried using it altered for effect, but studio executives killed the idea, fearing backlash. Still, traces of the original image remain. A fragment of the ghostly face can be seen hidden in the smoke if the contrast is boosted digitally. Some say it blinks. Fact 20. The screenwriter consulted a real occultist who later disappeared. Ben Maddow is credited as the screenwriter for the Mephisto Waltz, but few know he wasn't working alone. According to private correspondence found in his archives, Maddow met multiple times with an individual referred to only as G. A scholar, allegedly fluent in Hermetic Latin, G advised Maddow on ancient rites, soul migration myths, and artistic possession theory. Their collaboration ended abruptly. In a final letter, Maddow wrote, "G is gone, no trace, his notes were burned." Curiously, one of the remaining script pages features a margin note in a different hand. "The soul seeks the vessel that can carry its music. Only then does it return." No record of G's full identity has ever been found. But Maddow never again wrote about the occult, and the Mephisto Waltz remains his most mysterious screenplay. Bonus fact: the final scene's chant was real and not in the script. As the Mephisto Waltz ends, a barely audible chant plays under the last shot. It sounds like gibberish reversed syllables, echoing vowels. But linguists analyzing the scene discovered the chant was not nonsense. It matches the phonetic structure of an old Enochian invocation, a ritual language created by 16th century occultist John Dee. The chant was never in the shooting script. The sound engineer credited for the final mix had no memory of adding it. Even more eerie, the isolated vocal track doesn't appear in the master reels. It's as if the chant recorded itself. Years later, a fan claimed that when played at a specific pitch, the chant translates loosely to, "We do not leave. We change the face." Was it a coincidence? Or the film's final, whispered warning that some performances never truly end? So, was the Mephisto Waltz just another occult thriller riding the coattails of Rosemary's Baby? Or was it a cinematic seance echoing real rituals, real secrets, and real consequences? Tell us in the comments. Which fact left you questioning what was fiction and what was not? And which film should we dig into next? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the darkest stories are never the ones on screen. They're the ones buried beneath the celluloid.